Hello, and welcome to my Problem of Practice presentation. My name is Carla McDonald. The title of my Problem of Practice is Understanding the Work of Decision Making, a qualitative single case study on personal finance education policies and curricula in Washington, D.C. secondary public schools. Faculty Advisor, Dr. Jessica Meehan. Here is my agenda. High school students across the United States lack equitable access to financial literacy. This is a problem, as many students enter the adult world susceptible to making poor financial decisions, resulting in short-term and long-term effects which impact themselves and the economic stability of their communities and beyond. As of 2022, 23 states require a course in personal finance as part of the graduation requirement, while the remaining 27 states plus the District of Columbia offer limited to no personal finance education requirements. The adverse effects of a lack of exposure to personal finance education makes it vital to understand why some state-level education systems are unable to implement personal finance curriculum standards and graduation requirements, despite data and research which show positive effects of exposure to financial literacy education. In examining which states specifically do not carry any personal finance curriculum standards or graduation requirements, I found 3 states, those of Alaska, California, and Wyoming, plus the District of Columbia, as lacking both curriculum standards and graduation requirements. I chose to focus on Washington, D.C. for this research. Washington, D.C.'s public school enrollment topped 49,000 in school year 2020 and 2021, of which 86% were from minoritized groups and 75% were considered economically at risk. That same year, the 20 secondary public schools had an enrollment of approximately 11,500. My literature review consisted of 5 main areas. First, I looked at significant achievements in the United States in the 20th and 21st centuries, tracing the origins to the 1930s when consumer education courses were incorporated at the collegiate level. Second, I examined education policymaking in the United States. I found education to be a state power, plus one in Washington, D.C. The role of the federal government is that of an advisory agent. In my literature review, I also examined in detail how the D.C. education system is organized and works. Third, I looked at personal finance education curriculum policies across the country, and I found that there are many different variations in place. Fourth, I examined curriculum effectiveness and limitations. I found effectiveness really comes down to when financial literacy is taught in the different grades, what academic area it is aligned with, and what kind of teacher training and professional development are prescribed. In terms of limitations, I found conflicting goals, inconsistent integration, resource acquisition, and time constraints are some of the biggest factors. Other factors that I found included students' lived experiences, interest in learning financial literacy, gender, parent educational levels, student work status, post-secondary education plans, and student socioeconomic status. The final component of my literature review examined the pros and cons of personal finance education. The inability to make good financial decisions can impact an entire economy. But research is inconclusive in terms of impact and outcome of knowledge at the K-12 level due to a lack of longitudinal studies. The purpose of this qualitative case study aimed to understand the decision-making process regarding personal finance education within the D.C. secondary public schools by evaluating what is present and the projected path of the program. I formulated 3 research questions. Number 1, what led to the current curriculum in place in Washington, D.C. secondary public schools? Number 2, what are the decision-making agencies' perspectives regarding adding personal finance education curriculum in Washington, D.C. secondary public schools? And number 3, how does Simon's decision-making theory align with the decision-making process regarding personal finance curriculum and education within Washington, D.C. secondary public schools? This study utilized Herbert Simon's decision-making theory, which first appeared in his book Administrative Behavior, published in 1947. After theorizing on the significance of the administrative decision-making process, Simon viewed decision-making as occurring in 3 steps. Step 1, identifying the problem. 2, analysis of alternatives. And 3, implementation of a decision. The theory addresses 2 types of decisions, programmed and non-programmed. Programmed decisions follow established guidelines and protocols within an organization, while non-programmed decision-making involves singular issues that lack established protocols and thus are organically solved. Decision-making involves the process of implementation intended to solve a problem with optimal benefits to an organization. This qualitative case study utilized the state-level decision makers that make up the decision-making agencies in Washington, D.C. to better understand how one state-level system navigates personal finance curriculum decision-making. I utilized the qualitative design. This was the best research design for this study because I sought to learn from those whose lived experiences tell a story. I also utilized snowball sampling and was able to interview 5 participants. The data collection process consisted of 3 phases. In phase 1, I submitted research to Baylor University's Office of Research Compliance for review and received a non-human subjects research determination. I began researching the contact information for leadership for the legislative, executive, and educational decision-making agencies. I emailed each agency, briefly introducing myself, explaining my research, and in all but one case, I received an email from a member of the agency assigned to correspond with me. I then began to build rapport with that person, discussing my research and my professional experience. I also utilized social media outlets and began to follow major decision-making agencies and personnel. Phase 2 included using the internet to access documents, transcripts, websites, and audiovisual recordings. I also attended a DC City Council Committee of the Whole meeting in October of 2022. One advantage to this research collection process was the accessibility of online government documents and audiovisual recordings that were available to the public. In phase 3, I conducted my interviews. I conducted 5 semi-structured interviews with personnel from the legislative and educational decision-making agencies. The executive agency did not respond to my initial request for correspondence, nor my request for an interview. I reveal the findings of my study in 4 different ways. First, I provide findings for each agency, revealing the emergence of themes associated with each agency. Second, I examine themes common to all decision-making agencies. Third, I overlay the thematic framework with the theoretical framework findings. And fourth, I reveal the findings of each research question. I found 3 emergent themes when I examined the work of the DC City Council. They include proponent, the use of intervention and assertion of power, and equilibrating. Second, the themes that emerged when I examined the work of the Office of the State Superintendent of Education include a hands-off approach to curriculum and contradiction. 2 emergent themes related to my study of DC public schools, that of a work in progress and sporadic implementation. Fourth, I found 1 theme when I examined the work of the State Board of Education, that of support. Next, I will look at the findings from answering the research questions. The results of research question 1 showed a historical narrative of factors and events that led to the current day scenario as a result of 5 areas of sporadic implementation less than 10 years old. For research question 2, the results showed that all 4 decision-making agencies support personal finance education, but to varying degrees. Although collectively the actions favor adding personal finance education, DC City Council's actions proved to be the most supportive with the longest history of attention to this issue, while the Office of the State Superintendent of Education's inactions showed the agency to be the least supportive. Research question 3 findings show evidence of 2 of the 3 components of Simon's decision-making theory. First, there is a recognition of a lack of personal finance as a problem. This is evident by the pattern of behavior and escalation of attention based on a timeline of actions by the agencies. Second, a collective list of suggestions or actions implemented by the agencies represent alternatives. Yet the lack of cohesion and collaborative decision-making by the agencies show no decision has been made that aligns with the third component. In essence, the work is ongoing. 2 key themes emerged from data collection and analysis based on the research questions and the units of analysis. The first theme addressed impact and need for financial literacy education. The combination of actions, national data comparing DC to other states, demographic data, and recommendations from DC Financial Literacy Council demonstrate these 2 things. The impact of short, intermediate, and long-term advantages outweigh the absence of financial literacy. And second, there is a need for more financial literacy within the curriculum. The second theme addressed the idea of student preparedness. The data revealed codes that became categorized based on student preparedness as an influential factor influencing the agency's perspectives. I offer the following implications as they relate to the literature review findings. First, significant achievements. Urban et al. Work out of 2016 found that it is commonplace to take 4 to 7 years for development and implementation to take place. Yet DC is now in year 15. These findings are unique and do not align with the findings of the literature review. In terms of policymaking, according to Welder 2014, most states take a universal approach where the state legislature creates policy and the state board of educations implement it. DC has 4 decision-making agencies that play a role in policy creation and curriculum implementation. These findings are unique and do not align with the findings of the literature review. In terms of curriculum effectiveness and limitations, Urban et al. In 2018 found a required curriculum is shown to be more effective. Yet DC does not have a required curriculum and offers inequitable access to personal finance education. There is also conflicting goals and programs, which are a limitation and do not promote consistency. These findings align with the findings of the literature review, as only 23 states require personal finance as of the year 2023. Finally, the pros and cons of implementation. Lusardi and Mitchell's work out of 2011 found that financial literacy skills are imperative to all citizens, yet DC lacks personal finance standards and graduation requirements. DC offers inconsistent integration among the 20 secondary public schools. These findings also align with what is true in many other states. In terms of recommendations, I offer the following. First, to all decision-making agencies, the system in which the decision-making agencies coexist hinder progress. For DC City Council, I recommend that they amend the 2021 bill, remove the verbiage aimed at the State Board of Education that extends beyond that agency's scope of responsibility, include all LEAs in the bill, and pass the bill. Second, in regard to the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, I advise deciding which academic area to include financial literacy, creating a set of standards that are effective across all educational agencies, and develop and implement the 2021 DC Financial Literacy Council's action plan recommendations across all LEAs. In regards to DC public schools, I offer the following recommendations. First, expand the National Academy of Finance to more DC secondary public schools. Offer access to community programs such as the Financial Services Academy and the School Year Internship Program. Third, promote school clubs such as Future Business Leaders of America at all secondary public schools. And fourth, encourage more community partnerships with organizations such as Junior Achievement and Jumpstart Coalition. In regards to community stakeholders, I offer 3 recommendations. First, students and parents should explore the personal finance education options at their students' assigned school. Advocate for personal finance literacy courses at their school. And third, advocate to your decision makers. In terms of future research, I offer 4 suggestions. First, replicate this research in the other 3 remaining states that lack curriculum standards and graduation requirements. That would be Alaska, California, and Wyoming. Second, examine other cases where there is limited to no financial literacy education in the curriculum. Third, more research should be done concerning Washington, D.C., as implementation is currently taking place with the development of standards. That leads me to my 4th recommendation. Since Washington, D.C. is a system comprised of highly minoritized population, I recommend studying implementation and delivery strategies to gain insight into the intersectionality of financial literacy and minoritized groups. The target audience is the DC decision makers and their respective agencies. The goal of the distribution is that decision makers would take this information, consider the findings, and implement them. The proposed distribution method and venue include peer-reviewed academic and industry journals. In terms of professional presentation, that would include legislative and educational decision makers and their respective agencies in DC and other stakeholder groups. In terms of professional academic presentation, I am interested in presenting at the National Conference of State Legislature. And this is because the findings in the literature review show that a majority of states use a universal approach. Yet DC is unique in having multiple decision-making agencies. Additionally, I am interested in presenting at the National School Board Association Conference and the Annual Conference on Financial Education. Finally, I would like to say thank you.